Okay, Neil, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you.
And it's still blazing hot here in Britain, isn't it?
Yeah, it's this heat wave seems to be never ending.
Yeah, and can we blame this on global warming? I think we can in some way.
As we always say, any individual weather experience can't be blamed on climate change, but this fits the pattern of what will happen in climate change in the future for sure.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, one of the people that we both know who is a real expert on this subject, Mathijs Beckers, he came over here from the Netherlands to London to do a talk on nuclear power and different kinds of nuclear reactors. And that went very well. I filmed that for Talk Beliefs and for his channel. Yeah, he was really shocked at just how brown and crumbly everything was. You know, the leaves were coming off the trees. He seemed to think this was not a very good sign. Yeah,
it is an unusually hot summer, but the water shortages in the southeast are getting quite severe this year in the UK, and yeah, it does fit in with the patterns of what's going to happen if we don't sort climate change out. So it's good to have him over in the UK talking about his book Climate 0 Hour. And his basic premise is that this isn't a party political problem. It's not Democrats versus Republicans. It's not Conservative versus Labour. It's bipartisan, so therefore we have to all get together and take an approach. And he says, doing the maths, we can't fix climate change just with renewables alone. Nuclear power has to be part of the solution, including new, clean nuclear that's coming along. So yeah, it was really interesting. Do check out the videos.
And I heard something happened after I brought him to the park, and you were having a get together in the park, and a thief came along to give a talk. You all gathered around, and he was giving a talk, and then somebody fairly familiar showed up and weighed in on his chat.
Yeah, so people in the UK would definitely heard of Jeremy Corbyn. Well, Jeremy Corbyn's brother turned up.
Now, Jeremy Corbyn is the leader of the Labour Party.
Yeah.
But his brother is equally as infamous for different reasons.
Yes, and I didn't know this until the event, tell the truth. He's a climate change denier.
And somehow he heard about this talk in the park by Mathijs, and he sauntered along.
And thought he would just try to disrupt it and completely take over the meeting and be incredibly rude. He was very rude, man. Yeah, but the talk wasn't specifically about climate change. It was Tees giving a talk about his book, so we moved the subject along to a little bit, but it was very, very strange to hear him being so adamant that climate change isn't real. Wind power is just a way to tax people to spend more money. He's advocating for the fossil fuel industry effectively, and I've read some stories since that says he's earned money before from selling long-term weather forecasts to the weather to the fossil fuel industry. But very, very strange, very worrying that the man who I would expect has the ear of his brother is a climate change denier.
Wow.
The most shocking thing was how incredibly rude he was. Incredibly rude, incredibly pompous. Just basically wanted to shout over everyone the whole time, and if he says it loud enough and often enough, it's true. Luckily, there was quite a few people who were quite good at debating at the event, and yeah, it was an interesting conversation in the end. But his points were all spurious as far as I was concerned.
And that's usually the way with people who don't have good facts backing up their rhetoric. They shout the loudest, they're rude, they stamp their feet. We've encountered that before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was aware of these facts that I was coming up with. For example, the fact that the fossil fuel industry gets indirect and direct subsidies worth of $5.3 trillion a year, but he just denies that outright. Denies the fact that onshore wind in the UK is the cheapest form of energy you can get in the UK. This is just basic facts that anyone could check, and the fact that the fossil fuel industry gets more subsidies than the renewables industry. So you're not a fan of facts.
A lot of people aren't these days. It's very, very worrying, actually.
Yeah, and anyone can cherry pick information, so likes to use how comes Antarctic ice is at its greatest extent. I don't think it was last winter, to tell the truth, but that's very spurious, because when we talk about ice mass, we're not just talking about the area it covers, we're talking about how thick and deep it is as well. So it could be thin and cover loads of space.
So it's like,
but you could still have lost a ton of ice.
So it's like zooming in on the part of the information that supports your rhetoric and not looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, and sort of surround yourself with cult-like people who think because you're this famous name, they found some information.
Did he have a couple of cult members with him?
Yeah, basically, they were looking up to him as if he was this really special person. But if you look into what he's saying, it was mostly lies. So that's interesting. But when I did challenge one of the people as to where we get this information from that we're missing, because I like to read information from both sides, he said Alex Jones.
Oh. Now, if anyone doesn't know Alex Jones, now he has a radio show, YouTube program, I think it is, where it's all conspiracy theories, and he just yells them out, and the weirder the better, and people tend to believe him. You know, we're all being controlled by lizards from Mars, and that, you know, to that extent, you know, that kind of thing. You know, everything's a conspiracy. And
his channel is basically there. What people completely seem to miss in this whole thing is just to sell products to them. That's what he does with his channel. That's how he makes his money, is selling products to people. So he tries to get them to buy into his conspiracy theories. The interesting thing about Alex Jones is that in a court case over trying to regain access to his kids from his wife,
he then admitted something, didn't he?
He admitted that it was all just a show for the cameras. Yeah, he doesn't seem to have suffered. His popularity doesn't seem to have suffered because of that. Even though in a court, he himself admitted it was all a show, just to make money.
It's the same with these televangelists. You know, they disgrace themselves in some way. They're found with a prostitute or steal money or whatever, and then they're away for a while. Then they bounce back and they start all over again, and nobody seems to even care.
Yeah.
I can't understand that. I can't understand that.
But it was an interesting experience, and just goes to show we've got a long way to go before we can get people thinking critically in the UK at least.
Yes,
America. We know that.
Yes, and all over the world, I'm afraid. On a slightly similar line, on Saturday I did some filming in the park here, this time with Hare Krishnas. Now, I usually go to the park to film the evangelical Christians. They have an event every year, and this time the Hare Krishnas decided they were going to go to the bandstand and sing their music and sell their books and all that kind of thing. And I went down there, and they're all singing away, and I got some really good interviews with them, because I know quite a few of them now. But what I wanted to do is get interviews with people all across the board. So I had a couple of guys who spoke to me, people who had been in it all their lives, and people who've converted into it, and there is a difference in the way they see the religion. And I also got a woman's perspective, which is great, and also a young person's perspective. So that'll be coming up on the show.
Excellent.
So very pleased with that. And sticking again to this theme of weird beliefs, our friends the Flat Earthers. I'm afraid that they have reared their ugly heads again. I don't know if you if you heard the Flat Earther who came onto Dogma Debate. Now, this is, if you don't know Dogma Debate, this is a skeptical podcast hosted by David Smalley. It comes out of Texas. Actually, I think it's now out of LA. He usually has a preacher or pastor or something on there. He has a debate with him. But this time he had a Flat Earther on, and for the first time ever, David Smalley, who's usually very, very calm, he got so frustrated with him. I mean, table-thumpingly frustrated with him. And I just thought it'd be fun to play a little clip from that.
I respect your opinion, although I completely disagree with it. I don't think there's much to refute. You're saying, oh, I saw a guy jump to Earth and it was spherical looking. Well, that's something that can be easily faked. That doesn't prove anything. You know, okay. I saw the movie Gravity and Earth was spherical in that too. Is that proof of anything? No, it's just something you saw on a screen. So, I mean, you know, I don't.
All right.
I don't think
Great
you guys
point.
are making very good arguments for your
Well,
mind.
hold on a second, though. If you have a flat circular Earth and you haven't seen that from the top, why do you believe it?
Well, the flat part is pretty easy. I think lack of surface curvature over water explains that. And I think the roundness part is consistent with all unipolar radial ring magnets. I think the scientific basis, the magnetic scientific basis for Earth, that it would be flat and round. You know, you have to radially polarize the southern edge. So that's where you get the flatness, that's where you get the roundness.
Wait a minute, the curvature of the water, what about the boats that have sailed around the world?
What about them? East and west in a circle?
He's going to say that the whole thing is flattened out, almost like a cartographer's map, you know, where they lay those, they splay that thing out. Not quite that same model, but imagine it just flattened out, right?
Yeah,
so now it's 2D instead of 3D, and you're going to take that, turn it, set it down, right?
Right, but at some point, you would hit an edge of something.
That's what he says the North Pole is.
If you go
South
due
Pole,
south,
sorry.
you would hit the edge.
All right, and that is just one little part of this 2-hour podcast. So he sounds like he really seems to believe this, though, Neil.
And if you're not listening to the other side at the same time, it can sound like he's got a point, or he knows what he's talking about. But he was talking about the at the beginning about Baumberg, the guy who went up in the balloon and jumped from the edge of space. Said, well, you saw it on television. It could be faked because gravity's a film, apparently. Well, anything you see on television.
They say this all the time. Could be faked. Could be faked.
Yeah, it's just
so easy to say that.
But
special
he
effects
doesn't
aren't that
cover
good.
the fact that how difficult it would be to fake that in real time. That was shown live.
Yes.
That was shown live. It wasn't. It didn't go back to a studio and have weeks of editing and post-production CGI put in and shown later. That was shown live. So I mean, that's just nonsense.
Yeah. They always seem to think that there's this shadowy group of people who write and direct and make the effects. How much money goes into that?
Yeah, it's a massive industry that we don't know about.
And they have to be kept quiet, and their families have to be kept quiet. And
well, the thing is, you couldn't hide that because people would literally have to advertise the jobs.
yeah,
So
that's the point.
there would be a whole industry around faking this stuff. So people would be advertising the jobs. Apple, Tesla, anyone you think of can't hide a new product launch because they have to advertise for a specialist. So you can read about any of these things a year or so before they come out because they're advertising for a specialist. Or the plant in China that makes the part is telling everyone that that's what's going on. So this whole industry to exist, faking all this material, no one's ever seen an advert for it. No one's ever come out and said, yeah, I'm part of that.
And they had the audacity to say that it could easily be faked. Oh, okay, you do it then.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you edit quite
Do
enough
it on your
videos. How
laptop.
easy would it be,
Yeah.
Mark?
And I mean, I've told you I've got a friend who got into the whole conspiracy thing. I mean, you name it, he believes in it. 9/11 and the lizard people, and no one landed on the moon. I said, well, what about the reflector that they left on the moon? And the Japanese crew, which made a flyby of the moon and actually photographed the lunar lander on the moon. That could easily be faked.
Yeah, that could easily be faked, so therefore
Really?
all my nonsense must be true. It's a very strange
For what
jump.
reason?
Yeah.
Is this all being faked?
I know, and the moon one's a classic one. I think we mentioned it before, but the Russians would have exposed it. They wouldn't have let it go.
One of the reasons this guy says is because NASA needs to keep its budget going. But, I mean, how much budget would it expend creating all these...
But NASA's budget is actually tiny compared to what it used to be. So it's not really a big deal, the NASA budget. So that's a nonsense argument.
But you know the mind of the
itself.
conspiracy theorist. If we hear X, then it must be Y.
yeah, exactly.
So
I found out something you don't know. It was a bit like the Piers Corbyn fan club that were with him. They sort of seem to believe any sort of... You have to believe in so many conspiracies to keep your central tenant right.
Yeah.
So wind power is just a way of making your electricity prices higher. Even though onshore wind has been proven to be the cheapest form of energy, so therefore that's a nonsense argument in the first place. But they believe that lie, so therefore they have to believe lies like, for example, Piers Corbyn said that the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds was part of the big money conspiracy.
I mean, there are conspiracies. There are, but
but
not
they
to the
don't-
extent of what these guys are saying with the moon and the shape of the earth. And
Yeah, it's just lack of critical thinking skills being taught at school, and people believe in the first thing they're told unquestioningly. And it's everyone has this trait in them, but it's something we've got to learn to get past.
And don't believe something just because the person who says it seems knowledgeable, is very intelligible and charismatic. Cult leaders are like that.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean they have a word of truth or factual
I don't claim
data.
to be charismatic, but I claim to be slightly knowledgeable on some subjects, and I wouldn't want anyone to believe me. I would want them to check what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Absolutely check what I'm saying for themselves. And look at both sides. And just because the big guy says it and there's a little guy thinks he's found an answer doesn't mean the big guy's wrong. Doesn't mean the big guy's part of a conspiracy. There seems to be this thing that, if it's government, it's conspiracy. If it's corporate, it's conspiracy. If it's science, it's conspiracy. I mean,
No one ever seems to think that the Bible is a conspiracy. You know?
yeah, exactly. Weirdly enough, which the Bible
probably is, actually.
is probably the best conspiracy because there's no evidence Jesus existed, people.
Yeah. And it seems like somebody a long time ago wanted men to look at women and young women in a certain way.
Yes.
And this is unfortunately sort of crystallized recently in this article from pathos.com. GOP candidate normalizes pedophilia because the Bible. Oh, Lord. Michigan State Senate candidate Mike Saari argues men being attracted to 12-year-old girls is normal because it's in the Bible. Saari made headlines last February after making deplorable comments about the female judge in the Larry Nassar trial concerning the sexual abuse of underage gymnasts, at one point calling the judge a feminazi and making crude reference to her sex life. Now, the candidate's social media history reveals some racist comments concerning blacks, and then there was this post claiming pedophilia is normal, and I'll read out this post, which I think appeared on Facebook. Women don't seem to understand that from the very beginning of time, men have taken young girls prior to periods as wives and concubines. Even the Bible talks of this, so don't make it sound like men that are attracted to 12-year-old girls are sick. It's you women that can't get a grip on reality that's what's sick. It's only normal, and you can't change normal or a person's DNA.
Sounds like this man has a preference for young.
He's pointing fingers to himself there. I mean,
sounds like it. He's rode back on these statements since, because he's got a lot of kickback.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Fox News confronted Saari about the disturbing post trying to normalize pedophilia based on the Bible. At first, Saari tried to claim that his Facebook account had been hacked, but then he appeared to defend his comments. At one point, Fox News asked Saari, "Do you believe it's okay for men to marry 12-year-old girls?" And Saari replied, "Not in today's time." Now, with that Bible thing, that may have happened back in those days when I wasn't around, but in today's society, that would not work. But it seemed okay back in the day, and God seemed okay with it.
Well, it's nice of him to change his mind and say the morality of the Bible isn't fit for today's purpose, which is good.
That's a start.
It's a step in the right direction, isn't it?
I mean, there's some good stuff in the Bible, but it's very common sense stuff that's the good stuff.
Yeah, but some of the morality stuff is abhorrent.
Yeah, there's that. There's if you marry a girl and on her wedding day you find out that she's not a virgin, you should just stone her to death right there and then. If your adolescent child gives you a lot of grief, then take him to the town center and stone him or her to death.
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
But it's not the only religious book that promotes, is being used as excuse for paedophilia. The Quran.
The Quran, of course.
Happens all around the world. There's your child bride. But child bride is a massive thing in America. There's been over 1,000 children in the last 15 years, under 14, married off.
Yeah.
And the Bible is the reason they're doing it, because they've tried to bring in laws to stop this happening in different states, and they've never been able to, because the extremist evangelicals fight the cause of the Bible, and it gets stopped every time.
And you can never seem to get around their holy book. This ineffable source that they have is like, no, we have to tiptoe around that, even though they have cherry picked it so it says you can marry girls under 14, you can have sex with them, so on and so forth. And this is the problem. This is the problem.
Yeah, our morals of society have moved on hugely, and why we should be taking any notice of what this 2,000-year-old plus book says on the fact of marrying and having sex with young children it is nonsense. We need to get this out of society. I mean,
we don't have slavery as we used to.
It's
anymore.
legalised paedophilia is what it is.
So in the Bible, slavery is they don't have anything that says you must not own another person as property.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of arguments going back and forth on the apologetic side, but it should basically say thou shalt not keep a slave. And we don't do that. And we thought we came up with that ethic ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
We ignored the Bible in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is just religious books being used to maintain a small portion of men's penchants to paedophilia. That is nothing more, nothing less. And if we are to move forward as a liberal world, it's one of the things we need to get rid of for sure.
Most holy books seem to be written by men in power who had sexual problems.
Yeah, so you've got a few sites. You've got the absolute paedophiles who want to have sex with children, and obviously they love going into institutions, as we know, institutions like the church, other institutions as well. It's not just religious institutions, to be fair.
Yeah.
You can tell from the way the Bible's written, the jealousy of men. Just, I have to grab her before she's touched by another
Yeah, marry them off young
man.
so that
it's
I
such
have...
a misogynistic thing
I
as
absolutely have a virgin wife, you know,
Yeah.
and no one else touches her.
And
you know.
yet that man
Never
would have
mind
been
the
allowed
girl's
to,
feelings.
Yeah, and that man would have been allowed to have sex with however many, it wouldn't really matter. So it's such misogynistic writing as well.
Yeah.
And any policy made like that just needs to die.
Right. So, well, I think, Neil, wow, I'm a bit worn out from all that. All that irrationality and lack of reason. Yeah, okay. So we didn't have an end of the world this week. Did you notice that?
I didn't find one this week. There's got to be another one.
There probably is
shortly.
one. There's probably one coming up.
Well, we've always got climate change that's going to get us, so that's something we can actually do something about if we...
Yeah,
if we try hard
there
enough.
is a possible end of the world, but we can do something about it, yeah. So, okay. Thank you so much for joining me, and see you next week.